Good morning, everyone. And I think now we've started with the intros, I think it's a good opportunity for you guys to share a little bit more about your roles, and especially the age groups that you're working with, as that's going to be a foundation for lots of what we're going to talk through. Alex, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Alex Coulson from NSC. So we are the official body of University Esports. So at university, naturally, everyone's 18 up. In fact, 97% of our community are aged 18 to 26. But we still take safeguarding very seriously, and I'll happily talk more about that in shortly.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adam Mundie. I'm the Senior Account Director for Esports and Gaming at Wasserman. CSM have recently been acquired by Wasserman. That makes us one of the world's largest sports marketing groups. So myself and my team focus very heavily on esports and gaming. But ultimately, and from an age standpoint, because of the variety of brands we work with, from local to regional to global, any brand that wants to come into us will talk anything about sport, golf, tennis, football. But generally speaking, for that esports and gaming audience, it's that 16 to 30.
Great. Good morning, everybody. My name is Brian Cooley, Chief Marketing Officer of PLAYVS. We are a predominantly North American-based esports organization, but expanding into the UK, part of the reason that I'm here today. And we essentially run esports leagues for middle school, high school, as well as colleges and universities in the United States. And we work very closely with brands to power that. So, thank you.
Thank you all. So, when we think of brands and esports, a lot of the conversation and the headlines are taken up by the stuff that happens at the top tier of professional esports. And I think arguably maybe those deals are a bit safer for brands, as they're a little bit more mainstream, broader age range. But are some brands missing a trick by not looking at grassroots or youth esports? And how should the approach from brands differ at this level? I'm going to start with you again, Alex.
Yeah, sure. You might be unsurprised when I say this, but actually I think starting at the grassroots level makes a lot of sense for a lot of brands, because especially if they're non-endemics in the space, they need to find their tone, they need to find the right voice, and understand how the community behaves and operates. So if you work with a really highly engaged community at a youth level, then you can find what works and what resonates with the community before you then probably spend 10x more sponsoring an elite team, where if you do it right, fantastic, you'll get an incredibly warm reception. But if you get the wrong tone and you're not adding value to that community, it's an expensive mistake to make at the elite level.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think grassroots esports is so important to building the wider ecosystem. There are going to be many brands who enter the space and want that short, sharp impact of views, eyes, etc. But those who want to tell not just a story, but actually do something genuinely beneficial, and provide a path to pro for players who want to become professionals, or showcase gaming opportunities for younger audience. I think there's absolute opportunities to do so.
It's a great topic, and we are big believers in the fact that esports can have transformational benefits for students in terms of taking part. When you think about mental wellness, when you think about developing leadership skills, communication skills, and so we believe strongly that there's an opportunity for brands to come in and help to power that, whether it's in casual tournaments or in esports leagues in schools. And so what we would say, if you're going to get involved at the youth level, think less about the commercial interests you might have as an organization or as a brand, and think about the positive good that you can create in the community by enabling more students to take part in esports.
And on that commercials point, I mean, it's a lot of brand managers or brand partnerships roles to deliver against commercial KPIs. So how do you navigate that and perhaps help them to reframe what their objectives should be around grassroots or reaching younger esports fans and players? I'm going to leave that one with you, Brian.
Sure. Happy to dive in. So I think it's important that certainly a lot of brands, let's call it a financial services organization, a healthcare organization, may want to be involved, or a consumer product one for that matter, may want to be involved from the perspective of developing customer relationships. I would argue, though, that when you think about Gen Z and Gen Alpha, 14 or below, it's a very, very unique audience, and they think very differently than many of us think in terms of how they engage with brands And I think that there's a really important aspect of trust that needs to be built. And trust can be developed through making something available, making unique educational experiences or gaming experiences available to young students. Certainly, I think you can develop the basis of customer loyalty over time by first becoming a brand that is supporting important community or educational initiatives. And then from there, once that trust is developed, there can be certainly the opportunity for a long-term commercial relationship.
Yeah, for me, it all boils down to data. I think, from an agency side of things, our goal is to align the brands that we work with to the best possible partnerships, and therefore the best rights holders are the ones who can target the audience most effectively, most efficiently. So there's going to be plenty of rights holders who will say, oh, we have an amazing connection to the younger audiences, but it's 5%, 10%, and it just isn't worth it. So I think from an agency side, rights holder side, brand side, it's so important to use data to make sure we're targeting the right audiences and make sure we're not wasting our time, essentially, because otherwise, we've seen it so many times in esports, brands step into the space, they think they're targeting one audience, and then ultimately they don't do it the right way, they don't partner with the right brands, they don't activate the right way, and that's severely dents their desire to enter esports again.
And how easy is it to find that data? I mean, often with esports, we're talking about a mass audience, but does the data exist to allow you to really zero in on specific targets, whether that's by age or interest? Is that easy to come by?
So we use a variety of platforms at Wasserman. So we use the likes of Geek, GWI, Nielsen, but we also do our own independent fan surveys. And I think you've got to take that responsibility in order to truly understand the rights holders that you work with, because once you understand them, that means you can relay that to the brands and they can engage with the audiences in the right way.
And go on, Alex, and I'll just add to that. Is it an easier job for NSE, given that you're really working with a very defined demographic or an age range?
I don't think the team would like it if I said it was an easy job, but yeah, on the data point, put simply, just listen to them, ask them questions. You can watch how they behave, so you get qualitative first-party data about how they use our platform, what things they're engaging with, what articles, what content they like. You can monitor the Discord chat, which is a highly engaged community. We have over sort of 14,500 people in there, 700 messages daily. So you get a lot of that. And then if you need a deeper dive, you can do some research groups and focus groups and actually find out what matters and go to the different sub-communities and work out who's answering those questions and how you think they're going to answer them, and what that tells you about the important area that a brand can add value in. Ultimately, that's why, again, starting at a grassroots level can be a good test case for you to make up the odd mistake and find out, actually, this is where we thought we'd work, but sometimes it's the community that decides the campaign for you. They will latch on and decide what's the meme, what's the cult item, what is it that really resonates. So you don't always have to force it upon them. You can let it grow organically from the community.
So when we think about protective measures and safeguarding, particularly around younger gamers, younger esports fans, it feels like there's two sort of aims here. Firstly, it's protecting them from age-appropriate brands or brands that aren't age-appropriate. Alcohol, gambling spring to mind. And then you've got the other side of it where perhaps the products or services that those brands sell, the younger players just aren't at the stage of life where those things are relevant to them. So how do you help brands navigate that and ensure they are targeting the right audience at the right time, especially when you're dealing with younger gamers? Alex?
I'll sort of jump in. This is a way to answer it, but I'm going to give you a quote that if you remember nothing else, I reckon try and remember this quote. It's not mine. It's by two leading education experts, and they were talking about education in children, and they said, we all have our cultures and our values and our visions and our missions, but actually your culture is the worst behavior you tolerate. Your culture is the worst behavior you tolerate. So you can talk about all these grand visions and missions and statements and all these things you're doing, but if you let culture slide and you let things go and you don't monitor it and don't support it, then that's the sort of culture you're setting. So with that as your sort of starting point, I think you can go a long way.
Yeah, so I guess it's a two-part question as well. I've worked in the betting industry before within esports, and it's an incredibly hard space to work in. It was with Betway, who did an incredible job in terms of targeting the 18 plus audience, but doing it in the right way and doing the right kind of content. So there is a place for it, I think. When it comes to brands in more kind of traditional spaces that say finance or automotive or ones like that, again, I still think there is a right way to do it. So we work very closely with Giant X and HSBC while we're trying to reach that 18 plus audience as well. There's no reason we can't still be working with younger audiences to engage on financial education, well-being, that kind of thing. So I think it's so important to do it the right way and do it authentically, because any audience can benefit from your story if you do it the right way.
Yeah, but very, very good points. And what I would add to that is we operate in a school environment, and there's obviously a lot of requirements around privacy sharing. Depending on the age of the student, we have to have parental consent. And that is, for us, the true north. We obviously want to be incredible stewards to the community and to schools, and there's also, obviously, rules that you need to fit within. And so part of our work is really working with brands to help them understand that they should not think about this as a commercial enterprise first and foremost, especially when you're engaging in schools. And even if you look at programs in the United Kingdom here, the Premier League has got a wonderful, incredible program, Primary Stars program, 18,000 schools that's involved in now. There's not really there is no commercial aspect to it, but what that program does is it supports students in the community. It supports members of all ages. And one of the side benefits of that is it creates opportunities for fandom, developing fandom that's based on trust and a belief that a brand is doing something positive in the community. And so that very much is a model that we espouse and support.
And do you have any other examples of brands that either reframed their objectives or really understand how to create a nuanced campaign that perhaps either targeted younger gamers without alienating older, or older gamers without alienating younger ones? Adam, I'm going to put that one to you.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's been a really recent example which brings to mind. It might be a bit of a cop-out, but I've loved what IKEA have done recently. While their focus is very much, we're trying to employ over 18s, in actuality, what they've done is they've been truly been able to engage with that younger audience, because Roblox is heavily dominated with that Generation Alpha audience. So it's got people really excited, even when they can't sign up or even when they can't become an employee, because it shows what the future of gaming and esports can be. So I love the Roblox example. It is a bit of recency bias, but I think it's a great way to target the older audience who will actually be listening to their kids as parents, but also for the younger audience, the future decision makers that they'll be looking to reach in the future.
Alex, anything from your side?
Direct with NSC, so we are all sort of 18 plus, but I think more generally, it's hard to pick a necessarily specific example, but it's about how the brand approaches things and considers, just because they sell a particular product or service, again, so some of the points Brian's making, how can they just actually add value to that community? So, with us, with Monster Energy, it's more or less all about having fun. So that's the kind of vibe that they're bringing. Whereas Intel, it's a bit more cerebral. We have our Intel Future Gen program, which is supporting rising talent in the industry, many of whom are here today. And so it's just finding the area which suits your brand, suits your own personality and the audience that you're talking to.
And do you find when brands do come to you, are they open to that, or is it a bit of a re-education job for them on reframing how they should approach esports, or do you feel like they come with the correct sort of mindset and to be open and maybe mix things up to how they might usually do a brand partnership?
I mean, on our side, I'd say it depends on where the brand is, on their kind of experience within esports and gaming. Those who have a sort of track record will obviously be more confident and probably found their tone of voice. The others that are probably, and we have many that are kind of new into the space, so we're working with Pringles and expanding our partnership with them. They're very much open and receptive to understanding what we're telling them, because we have a very good sort of partner relationship, and they have obviously their objectives and their brand guidelines, but they want to know what we think would work for them. So yeah, I think their brands are pretty receptive, and the right brand managers out there are asking the right questions.
And Adam, in your agency world, obviously you will have to do a lot of consultation with brands and brand managers. Is there a big education job around esports and what the potential returns could and should be?
Yeah, it's a massive job to do. So a good example is we work very closely with the likes of a Unilever, so a big old beast of a company, big old conglomerate. They have some serious experts in esports and gaming, but obviously the brand leads for each of the various brands won't actually know the space so well. They might have expertise in sport or music or whatever it may be. So there's definitely an education piece, because as we always try and instill, it's very much about authenticity. It's all about credibility. It's about how you do it, not necessarily what you go into. But if you combine it all, then that's the only way to tell the best possible story.
One of the things I was going to add is that we have found that there's a need for a lot of education and perhaps reintroduction for brands getting into esports. If you look over the past 5 years, a lot of brands have been there. A lot of brands maybe feel a bit queasy about their investments there, or maybe they didn't pan out, or maybe they feel as though the opportunity wasn't fully mature. So part of, I think, all of our roles is perhaps helping brands to understand that the water is very warm to hop back in the pool, so to speak, and that there's really think about it in a targeted way, and think about it not just sort of as a drive-by sponsorship, but actually deeply investing and doing that over a period of time and a period of years, because at the end of the day, gaming is the single biggest opportunity to engage these next generations. This is where these folks spend all of their time.
So part of this session description did pose the question whether or not it was a concern that there's a growing age gap between pro players and a slightly maturing esports audience. And I think we very quickly, unanimously agreed that it's really not. So I just wanted to address that with you. And I think if anything, that there is a growing age gap should tell you that the esports audience, even though they're getting older, is still sticking with esports. And I'd probably expect it to follow a similar curve to the slightly growing average age of a gamer. Maybe not hitting those peaks, but I just wanted to address that. Are there any sectors from which you'd like to see more brands looking at esports partnerships and reaping the rewards of the audience? And I appreciate this can be a bit of a come and get me for you guys as well. Brian, do you want to start?
So I think there's a huge opportunity for healthcare organizations to get more deeply involved. And that may sound not totally intuitive, but when we think about the pandemic experience that we have come out of, gaming was actually one of the key ways, at least in the US, and I'm sure it's very consistent in the UK, where students and young people were able to continue to communicate, to find a sense of normalcy. And one of the things that we have found, and a stat that I absolutely love, is across our entire network of 5,000 schools, 45% of those esports athletes have never taken part in any kind of a school activity before, not a sport, not band, not extracurricular. And so what that tells us is that esports is engaging a group of students, giving them the pride of developing leadership skills, teamwork, representing their schools and their communities. And I think there's a great opportunity for healthcare organizations, which are very focused on mental wellness, to think about how esports can actually be a vehicle to bring communities together, to make younger people think more thoughtfully about the role that they can play in their community.
Yeah, I think whenever I look at this space, I think of the most non-endemic brands possible, the most non-endemic industries to esports. You know, if you'd have asked me a couple of years ago, I'd have said fashion and lifestyle and that kind of thing. A year ago, I'd have said finance. I think it's been great to see so many industries taking to esports, whether it's telecoms with EE or with HSBC in finance. I think a space that I think is still really lacking, particularly in the UK, less so on the continent, would be actually insurance. I'd love to see more insurance brands get into the space, because I think there's, you know, we spoke earlier about the grassroots side of things. There's an incredible story to tell about the path to becoming a pro, or the path to becoming a professional caster or analyst. So I'd love to see that space grow a lot more, because I think I can't off the top of my head name a single big insurance brand that's actually in the space, and it feels like such a gap.
I think ultimately any brand can find, you know, it's a sector where young people congregate. So any brand can find their space in there. But I think, sort of touching on Brian's point a little bit about those soft and social skill developments that it can bring, I think it also brings a huge amount of technical skills and the analysis and the gameplay skills that can actually translate into really quite employable, transferable skills. So I feel like educators and sort of recruitment, and that's an area that we're working on to actually help our university students demonstrate their skills gained through esports participation to help them find a career, and not a career in gaming and esports. I mean, if they want to, sure, but actually a career in any sector, demonstrating the attributes they've built and developed through their esports and gaming participation.
Before we move to taking some questions from the audience, is there anything that you guys want to share that we haven't covered before we move on to that?
Just quickly touching on the sort of safeguarding, which was in the title. I think it's something that I think this whole sector can do a lot more on. And interestingly, I feel I'm slightly weirdly having a little go at pop at the publishers, who I think can do a lot more than just always necessarily the tournament organisers. And there's positive movements in the monitoring of voice chat and not just text chat. But going back to that kind of culture and how you set that space. And there are organisations doing more. I mean, we worked with Epic LAN and SAF Esports running a tournament for the NSPCC recently. And they've got a long track record with their CPSU, Child Protection in Sport unit. And they're starting to support gaming and esports to understand better about safeguarding. So I think it's something that is on all of us in the industry to kind of step up. And perhaps those with the biggest purses to step up a little higher.
I think that's a really valid shout, so thank you for sharing that.
One other thought is that I think we believe that esports can be an incredible facilitator for technical careers. And so yet another reason why brands, especially technology brands, or even financial services for that matter, should get involved. It's a phenomenal way to identify future talent. These young people are building their own computers, they're building their own networks, they're incredibly technology savvy. Many of them are shoutcasters, many of them have massive creator followings, and so these are the best technical employees of the future, and esports can literally be the vehicle that helps you discover those people.
Okay, I think we're ready to take some questions from the audience, if anyone has any, and someone should be coming with a microphone to you soon.
Any questions?
Hi, my name is Rafa from Woystone, premium fashion brand in esports. Quick question to you. You mentioned fashion as one of the vertical sectors, being, finding a natural habitat in esports, which is music to my ears. But you kind of mentioned that it was last year, you'd say, fashion, whereas we were concentrating on healthcare and perhaps insurance and other niche areas and opportunities in those sectors. So question one is, what did you say? Well, last year I would have said it was fashion. And also, what are the key success factors for a fashion brand in esports in your view?
Sorry, I can't actually hear the question. Sorry, I didn't actually hear it.
So first question was around last year. You mentioned that fashion was the sector that we were talking about in the context of esports entry and, experiencing the community of gamers as a big opportunity, and then alluding to insurance being the sector now. So the question was, why did you say last year as opposed to this year, and the future? And the other question was the key success factors for a fashion brand in esports, in your view.
Sure. So when I say last year, I mean that it's not the case this year. It's just that I feel in the last couple of years or so, it's really started to grow as a space. So the examples I'd give for fashion lifestyle would be Charlotte Tilbury doing a lot in the space across their Twitch channel, but also G2 with the likes of Ralph Lauren. I think that really kick-started quite a few influx in the space. So we've also seen in, more gaming metaverses, the likes of Roblox, where Nike have done things. So I think there's a lot more that can be done. We've seen the stuff that can be done more traditionally, whether it's teams, tournaments, that kind of thing. I think working more with streamers, there's the whole VTubers now. There's so much that can be done that it's a really exciting space.
Any other questions? You're giving me a workout.
Hiya. My main interest is within women and non-binary people's experiences within gaming, and I'm wondering, since you're talking about young people and trying to get young people more involved in esports, I'm wondering if you know, if brands are focused on this disparity, since gaming is typically such a male-dominated space. Are brands taking this seriously, and is it a focus for them? And how are they approaching branching out to young women and non-binary people?
So I think so. There was a question about how brands are getting more involved with women in non-binary communities. Yeah, I think in a good sense, more and more brands are looking at that. There's examples of work that E have done with Giant X or Sky are doing with Guild that are all kind of around that theme. And us as NSE, as a rights holder, as a community, we're working very hard to support our women and non-binary community. There's always more that could be done. The watch out, I think, for brands in this space is when they're doing it in what might be perceived as more of a tokenistic gesture. They're aware of the issue and they're looking to do something to support the issue, but the substance isn't actually behind the campaign. So there's some nice content, there's some good videos, but once the shiny stuff's gone, they're not necessarily doing the work within the community. And I think that's where the community is very receptive to these brands getting involved, but they have to do it in a full and committed way, not just for a few likes and shares.
I totally agree. It can't be a PR stunt. Esports gaming, it is supposed to be for everyone. And we have seen some fantastic campaigns do that. I think Dove is a great example of that. They created a campaign around avatars for all, which is essentially bringing, they talked about the kind of over-sexification, beautification of certain games, and they started making avatars that truly represented all shapes, all sizes, all genders, all body types, all skin colors, whatever it may be. And I think more brands will start doing that. They'll have seen the success of that. But I think it's an education piece as well. And I think there's so much more, even beyond gaming, that needs to happen there. But gaming can really be a tool for change in that space.
And also, it's a great question. And frankly, looking at the makeup of this panel, really, you should be up here as well, because there is a diversity issue in the sector, as we are evidencing right now.
We'll get you up there next year. We'll get you up here next year, yeah?
What I would add to what you guys just said as well is that there are more tournaments for female marginalized genders, so those communities are getting easier to reach if it is, which it should be, priority of brands to make those partnerships.
Any more questions? All right, I think that wraps it up.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks to the panel.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
guys. Thanks, everybody.